Here we are on beautiful Jones Street.
You saw Ted Jones.
What's up, y'all? How's it going? Ted Jones of the Ted Jones World Podcast. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome, man. I had a very busy weekend just to, start off strong. I went to... Hold on, I gotta unfreaking do this thing. I went to the Hamptons this weekend. Was being a little bouge. So Blade... I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Blade. Blade is like a helicopter company. And they took myself and like 18 other people out to the Hamps on their new Streamliner bus. It was very fresh. Blade reached out to me on TikTok. They were like, hey, do you want to be a part of this like singles weekend, little rendezvous situation? I was like, yeah, sure. Why not? It was a great time. I went out there, and then Friday night, I did a spot at this place called Main Prospect, which is like a lounge bar. And I featured for this guy, Joey Cola, amazing comedian from Long Island. And it was the longest set I've done in like probably since November. So the longest amount of time I've ever been on stage was 27 minutes. And that was back in November. This particular set, I was on stage for like 22 minutes and 30 seconds. I'll pop up some of the footage right here. You guys can see it literally looks like a living room. And at one point I was talking about how it looked like my grandma's living room. Grandma, I literally feel like we're in your living room right now. This is insane. Got the piano. My dad's gonna start playing show tunes on it. Rockers, man. No shade to grandma, but my grandma did come to the show. And grandma, I know sometimes you listen to the podcast. If you're listening to this episode right now, we appreciate the love and support that you always give me. You know what I mean? I don't know if you guys have a lot of support from your family in what you do, but I myself, I feel super blessed to have a lot of support from my family. So Friday night, got out there at around 7:30 p.m. The bus landed. I guess the bus arrived, I should say, at 7:30 p.m. And I thought that I wasn't going to be going on stage till 9 p.m. So I was like dilly-dallying. I was like taking my time. And then one of the guys who's running the show was like, hey, Ted, are you coming? I was like, yeah, I thought it was going on at 9. And then they were, boom, ready to go at 8 p.m. He called me. So I'm driving. I don't want to incriminate myself. I'm driving over the speed limit just by a little bit to get there. I get there. It's literally, as soon as I get there, the host goes on. He does 15 minutes. And then I went on shortly after, did 22 minutes, but I felt comfortable out there. And given the crowd was more so of like an older type of crowd, I don't want to be like rude and be like, yo, there was mad old people, but like it was a local type of crowd. If you guys pick up, you guys catch my drift. So before going up, I was like a little bit nervous, but I think in general, you got to go with what makes you what your strong stuff is, just being a comedian, and then you just adjust from that point. But it seemed like they like all the stuff that I was doing, and then I threw in some crowd work here and there. But the goal ideally is to get to a point where I'm super comfortable with at least like 50 minutes on stage, and then I'm able to headline other rooms. But this is how it breaks down usually. So typically there's somebody who hosts. This is if we're talking about like a headliner show, right? Like you'll go to places in New York City. Happens to me when I'm outside of comedy clubs. I'll be like, you guys want to see a show? I'll say this to random people on the street. They'll be like, who's the comedian? When in actuality, there's a number of comedians. It's usually a showcase show. But if you go on the road or you're going to like a specific person, the host will typically do around 15 minutes. The feature does maybe 25 minutes. And then the headliner does around 50 minutes. So the show ends up being like around an hour and 20 minutes. That's usually the sweet spot. And I don't know if you guys have ever been to a comedy show, but any time really after a 90-minute show, people start to get antsy. Really doesn't matter how funny the show is. It's just, it's like sitting for a movie. Because like if you're sitting around for a 90-minute show, you don't really want to go to the bathroom at any point. Because if you go to the bathroom, you're probably going to miss like half of a person's set. Right? If people are doing like 15 minutes or people are doing 10-minute sets, you don't really want to go to the bathroom at all during that particular time. Or I don't know how long you go to the bathroom for. I guess it really depends on the person. You know what I'm saying? But had an amazing weekend. And then also I competed in the Artists versus Writers 76th annual charity game in East Hampton. So yeah, I know you guys are thinking, Ted, you had a busy weekend. Yeah, I did. It was great. My first at bat, I had a fresh bomb over the left field fence, and all I wanted to do, I'm telling you guys, during that softball game was hit a bomb. The entire time I was like, God.
There's a shot. Field, that's got a
Bomb.
chance.
So I went up there, hit a bomb. Didn't really bat so well. I made a lot of great plays in the field. I think I went, to be honest, like 2 for 5 in that game. So it wasn't great, but I was playing the entire time. And people asked, Ted, are you an artist or a writer? And last year in the 75th annual Artists versus Writers charity game, I was potentially, I don't want to say poached, but I was taken away from the other team. So Mike Lupiga, who's a very accomplished and famous writer. He has been a captain of the writers team for probably like 20 years now. I was actually on the artist team last year, and he recruited me to the writers squad last year. So when the writers reached out to me like a month and a half ago asking me if I was going to play in the game, I was like, yeah, obviously I'm going to play in the game. And I think from this point forward, I'm probably going to be on the writers team. I mean, like, the thing is, I know it might sound cheesy, or it might not be cheesy. I don't know. But I like playing for this particular guy, Mike Lupiga. He takes the game very seriously, very competitively, and I think I like that. And while it's just a flash in the pan of an afternoon on a Sunday, or I guess it was on a Saturday, I should say, it's fun to take the game super competitively. And the thing about softball is, like, it doesn't necessarily, the more athletic team maybe wouldn't win in a situation like that, because there's not really any strikeouts. If people can hit it in a spot where the fielders aren't, they'll get on base. And like myself, when I was batting, the reason why I went 2 for 5 is because every ball I was hitting was a pop-up. You know, I wasn't hitting them line drives, which maybe I should have been focusing more on, more on, whatever. We had Katie Couric on the writers team as well, and then John Franco, who's a very accomplished pitcher for the Mets. He actually pitched all 12 innings, which was also exciting. It was a 12-inning game, extra innings, and I think that was the first time in many years that the announcers were saying that it's even gone to extra innings. I don't even know if it's on record that it's gone to extra innings, but we ended up losing by 1 in the 12th inning, and it was sad. It was sad. I didn't want to be a sore loser, but yeah, I guess for like 5 minutes. It was disappointing. And also during the game, you want to win so bad. But as soon as it's done, you're like, hey, you know, whatever it is. Until next year. You know, but it was an amazing game. There were probably like, I don't know, 400, 500 people who turned out for the event. And it was all for a great cause. So I love playing in that event. And I look forward to competing in that event many years down the line to come. So after this game, I go home, I go to my family house, I shower, and then I go to this Blade event at Bill Bouquet. Is that what it's called? Yeah, Bill Bouquet in Sag Harbor. Sitting around, I have like 1.5 spicy margaritas. And the thing in the Hamptons, the Hamptons feel like LA in that parking is very, very tough. It's not easy to park porque there's not enough spots for enough cars. And I think in a smaller town like Sag Harbor, it's just exaggerated. Maybe in other towns in the Hamptons, there are more parking, but Sag Harbor, I'm telling you, geez. It was like I had to circle around the block, per se. I mean, this per se, yeah, I mean, that means like, that's how you say it. For 20 minutes to find a spot. I did feel like I was in LA. Finally, some guy wearing a Navy hat, he was like, hey, buddy, you looking for a spot? I was like, yeah. He's like, how desperate are you? I'm like, dude, I'm desperate. He goes, follow me. I loop around this guy for like, for 5 minutes. I get his spot. But yeah, it was a great time out there. And anytime, you know, I can spend some days away from the city, I always like it. But I think I have found my limit. Unless I am somewhere getting the bag for multiple days at a time, I think 4 nights is probably my maximum. Like even when I visit my pops in Florida, the maximum amount of time I want to be down there is 4 nights. I just get antsy. I want to come back to New York. I want to be like, oh, let's get a coffee. Let's get a haircut. Let's go to CVS. Boom. That's all. That takes an hour. Anywhere else in the country, that takes a full day. So you guys know that, like, you know, my pace. I like to keep up the pace. I like to go quick, snappy, quick. But yeah, it was an excellent weekend. I enjoyed it. And I am enjoying doing stand-up in New York City a lot more. And that's usually the best time to do it is on the weekends. And anytime I get offered to do a spot, it does feel a spot, meaning a stand-up comedy set. I do feel like I'm sometimes missing out. if I am somewhere else, which is bad. It's bad to feel FOMO, and obviously you'll get more inspiration from being away for a little bit, but sometimes I can't help it. You know, you guys ever like not go to a party or something and then you hear about how great the party was the day after? You're like, oh, I was invited. Why didn't I go? Right? That's kind of how I feel sometimes about stand-up comedy, where there are some shows that aren't as good as other shows. And it doesn't even matter about the attendance of the shows, right? Like it could be a sold out crowd for a showcase show, and maybe they're not as good of an audience as if it was 3/4 sold out. It happens like that sometimes, especially in New York City. And if people are ready to attend a show, they're ready to laugh, they're going to be fun. If there's so many different factors in New York City comedy. If the host isn't great, if the comics maybe aren't bringing their A game, they're trying new material, maybe there's a heckler in the crowd. There's so many different variables to making a comedy show a great comedy show. But I think New York City has the highest repertoire of comedy shows. Just because this is where comedy really was birthed, right? You always hear about New York City comedy. Maybe you'll hear about LA comedy, and now the bussin' scene in Austin, Texas is definitely coming to the forefront. But it's New York, man. I'll die on that hill, as they say. It's New York comedy. But just to talk about other things that are going on in my life, you guys know this podcast has been moving and grooving for about, I think it's actually, it's like 5 years now. We're probably coming up on the anniversary. If today is not the anniversary of the podcast, it's either next week or it was last week, but 5 years we've been doing the Ted Jones World podcast. Initially, I had one of my buddies helping producer Pat. He was on the couch with me. Then for a number of episodes after, I was doing it solo. Then Peter Moran came around. We were doing the podcast 3 times a week at one point. That was like throughout the pandemic, and then we got down to 2, and then now I don't mean to seem like I'm slacking off or anything, but now we're doing the podcast 1 time a week. And if you guys could just bear with me, it's more difficult now with all the stand-up going on and trying to put out other content that's not just podcast related on the net. You know, I'd like to do podcast content. I like to do stand-up content, sketch content, vlog content, sports content. So there's a lot of freaking content. And it's a different game than it was 15 years ago, right? Like when Instagram first came to play. I guess it probably was, around probably like anywhere from like 12 to 15 years ago. But I know I've talked about this before. It really had clips on the internet in terms of stand-up and sketches really haven't been prevalent until like 2019, 2020. You saw the dances on TikTok. A lot of people blew up on TikTok because they were doing dances. They were doing reviews. The Vine days were different. Vine, I remember when I was in college in like 2013, 2014, you could do a 3-second video and it would go viral. But now it's more of like crafting a story on Instagram and TikTok is what I think does best. And I'm still working on that myself. You know, there's so many things that I'm learning every day, whether it's YouTube, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, any one of the social media platforms. There's so many, and there's so many different ways to reach people now. And I spoke about this weekend with somebody. I wonder if we're going to get to a point where people are so inundated with content that they just want to know the spark notes on the content, right? Like when I was in middle school and in my high school days, I didn't want to read a book. I would just be like, let me just read the spark notes, which was obviously frowned upon a whole lot because people didn't want you to read the spark notes because it was theoretically like cheating. And also in math class, people didn't want me to use calculators, but now people are using spark notes for books. People are using calculators all the time. It's like people don't even exist now without calculators. I wonder if people even know, or middle school students know how to divide and multiply. That's an interesting question. I'm sure they're still learning fractions, but I had a difficult time with fractions and dividing and multiplying. I remember one time the 4th grade teacher sat me on the rug and like gave me blocks to divide and multiply. I was like, bro, this ain't easy. But anyway, back to my point. I wonder if at some point people are just going to start watching spark notes for movies and TV shows, being like, oh my God, I'd rather not watch 5 episodes of that show. I'd rather just read a 10-minute article or watch a 10-minute TikTok of somebody talking about that TV show, so you feel like you've watched the whole thing, because we don't have enough time to get all this content. We're inundated with content. You guys are like, oh my God, Ted Jones, you're using big words out here. Yeah. But that's an interesting fact, because there's so many platforms, right? Like, chances are, I mean, 20, 25 years ago, and then, yeah, I get 20, 25 years ago, everybody was watching the exact same show. Everybody would sit down on the couch on Sunday night and watch Entourage. But you guys know I have beef with that show from a long time ago, if you guys have listened to the podcast. It used to be my favorite show, but I guess we're not going to bring up again why it's not my favorite show. But if you have any questions and you want to know why, message me, Ted Jones at Gmail. No, I have so many emails now, bro. Ted at tedjonesworld.com. That's the new email that I'm trying to use and implement more so. It's also tedjonesworld at gmail.com. But people would sit around and watch that particular show. Now, there could be a video on Instagram that has 50 million views and nobody in your friend group has seen it, which is crazy, right? Because if you think about any show on TV that had 50 million views, chances are everybody you know has seen it, because the TV was the only thing that was around for people to watch. Now people got screens in their hand. People got videos that they're watching every 5 seconds. People can watch 3 videos in 5 seconds, you know? If you don't like the hook, boom, on to the next video. So technology is changing a whole lot, but I do think stand-up comedy is going to stay strong. Now, is it going to stay as hot as it has been like since COVID, like the past 3.5 years? I think that you're seeing more platforms that want to implement stand-up comedy. We talk about the Snapchat comedy show that I hosted in, I think it was, at the end of May or in the middle of May. Snapchat is looking to put more comedians on the platform, bring in more clips and more people just to monetize on the content game. So I think stand-up comedy is going to be huge, at least throughout my lifetime. I know I don't look like it. Hopefully, I'm 32 and a half, but I think that live entertainment is going to be huge. The Broadway plays, it's going to remain huge. The Broadway plays, the stand-up comedy. I don't know what's going to happen with movie theaters. You know, we saw when COVID came around that movie theaters took a huge hit, but it seemed like they came back for a little bit. Now, I don't know how much you guys watch or go to movies, but I don't know how much Gen Z goes to movies, just because, like, it's a lot to sit still for 2.5 hours. I've talked about this previously, but anytime I watch a Mr. Beast video, you know, you'll get your food together on the table and you'll start to eat your food. But as soon as you eat your food and you're watching a Mr. Beast video on YouTube, you don't have enough time to look at your food and watch Mr. Beast. Right? Like, you have enough time to watch a TV show and eat your food. It's slow enough. It moves at a pace where you could take a bite and look up and look down. But Mr. Beast, if you look away, and no joke, for 1 second, you will have missed an important part or an important cut, which is crazy. And I mean, he does a great job at keeping the audience hooked, but at what cost? I mean, I'm not like talking noise about Mr. Beast, but it's just interesting how you watch these videos now and there's always something for your brain to watch in the corner of the TV, maybe in the center of the TV. Somebody's talking at a particular point. There's music. So there's so many things that is triggering your brain. There's so many things that are triggering your brain from a sound perspective, a visual perspective, and other senses that, you know, you wouldn't expect from that you don't get when you're watching a movie. Or in a movie theater, right? Like, I know at Disney World or Disneyland or Universal Studios, they'll have an Indiana Jones effect. Shout out my uncle, Indiana, where there's like mice running on your feet and you'll feel it. You know what I mean? Oh man, it says that this SD card has limited space remaining. But, you know, I'm just sitting here chopping it up with you guys. People ask how I feel about pickleball. I know I've talked about this previously. I guess we'll do a quick tangent since the US Open is starting this Monday. I'm actually excited about this as you guys are listening to this, or if you're listening to this when I first put it out, it's Thursday. But I'm looking forward to the US Open. I always look forward to those 2 weeks. It's a great time. Haven't decided when I'm going to be going to the US Open, but we've got a lot of US Open party event activities that are going on. So we'll see. anytime I can get out there, I always appreciate how great these people are. And I'm not 100% sure what the prize money is for the first round loser, but I do imagine it's around like $90K for the first round loser of the U.S. Open, which is amazing. And I'll actually pop up the correct stat if I'm wrong here. You guys will see it. But $90,000 to lose in the first round of the U.S. Open, that's great. You know, if you think about that's your only prize money for the entire year. And a lot of these people who are losing in the first round of the US Open, they're probably making six figures, but making six figures in tennis, guys, it's not a lot. If you're traveling with a coach, you're paying for hotels everywhere. It's so different than other team sports because the team is paying for everything. Team is paying for the food, the coaches, the trainers, the traveling, the hotels. Tennis, it's all you. You'll get some sponsors, but not everybody gets sponsors. And if you guys have ever heard of the Kalamazoo tournament in Michigan, it's the 18 and under USTA championship event. The winner of the USTA championship event in Kalamazoo, Michigan, which just ended, that winner gets a wild card into the main draw of the US Open, which leads to a tough choice sometimes, because even though with NIL deals, students are allowed to get paid by sponsorship deals. If you win the Kalamazoo tournament, you get a you get a wild card into the US Open. But if you lose in the first round of the US Open and you decide to take that money as prize money, you're not allowed to compete in college tennis, which doesn't really make any sense. So you're allowed to get sponsorship deals, but you're not allowed to get paid from a major event. It's weird. They need to fix that. But you have to make the decision if you lose in the first round, or maybe you make it to the third round. If you make it to the third round, I think at some point you got to be like, all right, I got to go pro, or at least try and go pro and forego college tennis. Because college tennis, it's great for developing, but if you make the decision to go to college tennis, it's really hard to run up the ranks by the time you're, a senior in college or you graduate at that time. Because in tennis, you peak a lot early. Maybe you're not peaking at the age of 22, but by the time you're like 24, 25, you're peaking. And if you look at older guys or guys like Andy Roddick, he won the US Open when he was 21 years old, which is insane. He would have been a junior in college at that particular time. Now the game is so intense that you look at guys like Carlos Alcaraz, who's only 21. He's a full beast. And then there's other tennis players who are around the same age as him who are just insanely good. But if you're that good at tennis and you're making, if you make the third round of the US Open and you lose in the third round or fourth round and you're making $200,000-$300,000, it's definitely got to be a tough decision. Are you going to go pro? You're going to go to college? But at that point, I remember when I was like 14 years old, this is when I was delusional and thought I was going to go pro in tennis, which by the way, you'll know like at 16 or 17 if you're legitimately going to go pro. But 14, I remember I asked my mom, I was like, Mom, if I'm top 10 in the country by the time I'm 16 years old, this was in the 18 and unders, can I go pro? She was like, yes. Maybe she was being a supportive mom, or maybe she thought I wasn't going pro, but either way, I feel like it's a tough decision to make when you're a top tennis player. Not even a top tennis player, when you're a mid-tier tennis player, but there's so many different tiers of tennis. There's Division I tennis, which is what I played. Then there's top Division I tennis. Then there's futures tournaments where if you win the tournament, you get like $10,000. There's Challenger 50Ks where if you win that tournament, you get $25K. Challenger 100Ks where if you win that tournament, you get $50K. Then there's ATP 250. If you win that, you get $125K. Then 500, if you win that, you get 250K. 1,000s, you get like close to $1 million. Then the Grand Slams where you get like 3 millions. But only so many people, as you know, win the Grand Slam because there's only freaking 4 a year. But there's so many different levels in tennis, and being an athlete is extraordinarily difficult, especially with the amount of knowledge that people have today, trainers. And if you look at the older players, I know I keep referring to them as older. I'm not even going to talk about Andy Roddick. You look at a guy like John McEnroe, who's 65 years old now. The way that they were playing tennis back then is nothing like the way that they're playing tennis today. The amount of commitment that it takes now to be a professional tennis player, you got to be in the gym 2 hours a day. You got to be eating right. You got to be running. You got to be playing tennis. You got to be traveling all over the world. You got to be living at that tennis academy. because you really got to put the full freaking effort into it. But if you guys are looking for some fun TV over the next 2 weeks, I'd say try and watch some tennis. Let me know what you guys think. It's definitely a lot more fun to watch highly competitive tennis on TV than it is to watch highly competitive pickleball on TV. And maybe I'm speaking for just myself, but I imagine hopefully I'm speaking for you guys too. It's definitely fun to play pickleball, although I've only played it once, and yes, I'm 5-0. Hopefully it doesn't take over tennis. I do see the merit in putting 2 pickleball courts on a tennis court. I think it makes sense, but we got to save the game. So if you guys have any thoughts about tennis or anything related to my entire life in Ted Jones World, send me an email. TedJonesWorld@gmail.com, Ted@TedJonesWorld.com. Would love to hear from you. Follow along for my stand-up journey and all things Ted Jones World. Thanks so much for tuning in. I appreciate the heck out of each and every single one of you. We'll see you next time. Peace.